Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to tackle something really cool. It's a new kind of constitutional framework from a project called NK. And what they're trying to do, well, it's a huge deal. They're taking on one of the biggest, most fundamental problems in any decentralized system. How do you grow? How do you change without completely falling apart? So let's just start with the big question right up front. Think about it. In any group, any community, whether it's online or in real life, people are going to disagree, right? They're going to want to go in different directions. But what if? What if growing didn't have to mean breaking up? What if you could evolve and build brand new things without tearing down everything that came before? All right, so the old way of dealing with this, the standard playbook, is something called forking. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. A disagreement gets so big that a chunk of the community just leaves. They copy the entire code, the whole system, and start their own separate rival version. I mean, sure, it solves the disagreement, but look at the cost. It's brutal. It shatters the community, it splits everyone's identity, and it totally erases any kind of shared history. It's a really messy divorce. So this is where NKAI comes in with a totally different approach. Instead of solving disagreements by separation, they want to solve them by extension. It's a huge shift. You're not creating these rival universes, each with its own truth. No. The idea is to have a single ecosystem where new ideas can just be built right on top of or even next to the old stuff. Everything grows together. And that's their whole mission right there in a nutshell. Creation without fragmentation. Okay, that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually pull it off? Well, their answer is something they call the Forge. And you can think of the Forge as the purpose-built environment, the core infrastructure that makes this whole new way of growing even possible. So what exactly is the Forge? Well, it kind of wears a lot of hats. It's the place you go to create stuff, right? It's your build and deploy pipeline. It's also the registry that keeps track of every single thing that gets made. It acts as a compliance boundary. And maybe most importantly, it's the continuity engine that makes sure everything keeps running together without breaking. It's really like the operating system for this new kind of digital city, one that's built from the ground up for constant, stable creation. And just as important as what the Forge is what it is not. And this is really key. The Forge is absolutely not a gatekeeper. It's not an app store picking winners and losers. It's not some platform authority telling you what you can and can't build. It doesn't control monetization, and it definitely isn't there to censor anyone. Its one and only job is to enable people to create things. It never, ever gets to decide what succeeds. All right, so if the Forge is the city's operating system, then what are the actual buildings? What are people creating? Well, that brings us to the core building blocks of this entire system, something called Nodecraft modules. So what's a Nodecraft module? Honestly, it can be just about anything you can imagine. It could be a business, a new tool, a community for people who love the same thing, a piece of art, anything. The really important part is that every single module is its own sovereign thing, tied to a digital identity. And this is crucial. You can never be forced to use one. They're non-invasive. Adopting a module is always 100% your choice. And this brings us back to a really simple but powerful idea. Creation stays human. What that means is anyone can build one of these modules. You don't have to ask for permission. You don't need a license. There's no big, scary central committee you have to impress. The power to create, it stays right where it belongs, with you, with individuals. Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. Permissionless creation, doesn't that just open the door to complete chaos? And that's a fair question. This is where a really interesting role comes into play. The Guardians. Now, it's super important to understand what they are. Think of them less like cops and more like watchtowers. They can totally annotate risk, they can flag things that look like harmful patterns, and they can require creators to disclose what they're doing. But, and this is the big but, what they can never do is block someone from creating something lawful. They can't enforce their own ideology or demand that everyone conform. Their whole purpose is to provide safety without creating fear. So, this brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, the core DNA. Because even though creation is free, it is definitely not a free-for-all. It's not the Wild West. Every single thing built in the Forge has to follow a set of absolutely foundational, non-negotiable rules. They call it the core DNA inheritance. And you can literally think of these 6 principles as the laws of physics for the entire NK world. First, you got non-custodial economics, meaning you always, always control your own stuff. Then, sovereign identity, so nobody can just take your digital self away from you. Third, consent-first interaction. You decide who and what you engage with. Then there's guardian oversight, which we just talked about for safety. Then proof of participation compatibility, which is just a way to make sure everything plugs into the system fairly. And finally, and this is a big one, no hidden extraction, so no one can secretly skim value off the top. Every single module automatically inherits this DNA, no exception. And just to be crystal clear, there is zero ambiguity about this. This isn't some company policy that can be debated in a meeting. It's not a guideline that you can kind of bend. It is a hard-coded structural reality of the system. If your code, if your build violates this DNA in any way, the system just won't load it. Period. It's not a person making a decision, it's the physics of the world kicking. So when you put all these pieces together, the forge, the modules, the DNA, you start to see the big picture. You have this environment where anyone can create anything they want, but it's all happening inside these unbreakable, fundamental boundaries. And that forces you to ask a really profound question. What is this thing, really? Is it just another protocol, or is it something more? And this is why it all matters so much. Let's think about the alternative. Without the forge, what happens? Well, NKAI would either just become static and never change, or any new innovation would need permission from some central group. And eventually, you know it's going to happen. A big disagreement would lead right back to forking, the very problem this whole thing was built to solve. But with the forge, you get a totally different future. Evolution is constant, your identity stays with you whole and intact no matter what you do, and communities can actually grow and change without having to break apart. And here's the final and maybe most critical piece of the whole puzzle. This system is locked. It's set in stone. Sure, the tools can get better, the UI can be improved, all that stuff can evolve. But the core principles, the absolute rules against forking and against centralized control, those are immutable. They can never be changed. This is what they call the constitutional lock. Which brings us to the closing thought, a direct quote that really sums up the ambition here. The goal isn't just about building a slightly better piece of tech. It's about trying to build a resilient, evolving digital society, one that can actually last. It's the difference between building a protocol and building a civilization.